If you ask me, we need to look at this recent casting shakeup not as a simple administrative decision, but as a dangerous, high stakes deadlock for the characters involved. The transition from one actor to another in the role of Ethan is not just about scheduling conflicts, it is a strategic repositioning on a chessboard that is already heavily loaded with tension. Ethan is currently cornered, bleeding out in a gallery storage room, heavily entangled in a web of blackmail with Ava, and desperately trying to flee from the mysterious arrival of Hudson. The writers have placed Ethan in an absolute stalemate, a corner from which he cannot simply charm his way out. By bringing in a fresh face to permanently anchor this character, it looks like the show is preparing to lock Ethan into a grueling, long term psychological warfare, one that requires a permanent fixture rather than a temporary guest star. I firmly believe that this recast is a massive signal regarding the longevity of Ethan and his current storylines. We have watched Ethan manipulate power, exploit Ava, and deliver cryptic messages on behalf of Sunny. This is not the behavior of a man who is going to catch a midnight train out of town and never look back. The psychological motive behind cementing a new, permanent actor in this role is to establish a deep-rooted adversary and anti-hero who will be present for the long haul. The writers are meticulously building a foundation for Ethan that intertwines him with the darkest corners of the mob and the highest echelons of corporate espionage with Hudson. They need an actor who can carry this heavy, serialized burden for years, not just weeks, ensuring that every manipulative glance and calculated risk feels entirely earned. But here's where the true mystery begins, guys. What happens to the actor who just vacated the role of Ethan? If you are sitting there thinking that the network simply let him walk away into the sunset, I urge you to look closer at the historical patterns of this show. Letting go of such a recognizable and beloved talent when the canvas is practically begging for a monumental return would result in an unforeseen fallout that the network simply cannot afford. I highly suspect that they have deliberately freed him from the constraints of playing the charming conman so that they can quietly slip him into a role that carries far more emotional weight and historical significance. The timing is simply too perfect to be a mere coincidence. Consider the sheer emotional devastation that has recently ripped through the canvas regarding the fake Nathan. We just watched Lulu, Liesel, Britt, and little James endure the absolute agony of discovering that the man they welcomed into their homes and hearts was actually Cassius, an imposter who manipulated their deepest vulnerabilities. The town is currently drowning in the grief of this deception, mourning a man who was never really there, while the memory of the true hero remains untarnished but deeply mourned. If you ask me, the writers did not put these characters through this incredibly specific, agonizing trauma just for the sake of a temporary villain arc. They primed the canvas for something much bigger. This brings me to my ultimate theory. Could it be that the actor who just left the role of Ethan is secretly preparing to step back onto the canvas as the real authentic Nathan? Just imagine the sheer magnitude of this twist. For years, we have operated under the assumption that Nathan perished in a tragic explosion, leaving Maxie a grieving widow and fracturing the family forever. But in this world, especially with the intelligence agencies heavily involved in the current landscape, death is often nothing more than a strategic relocation. If the real Nathan never actually died, his sudden reappearance would send shockwaves through the town that would dwarf the recent revelation about Cassius. Let us look at the evidence hiding in the margins. The intelligence agency is currently in a state of absolute chaos, with Z pulling strings, Jack dealing with blackmail, and Ross operating as a rogue double agent. We know that this agency has a long, dark history of extracting valuable assets right before their supposed deaths, wiping their records, and utilizing them for top-secret, deep-cover operations. It is entirely plausible that Nathan was pulled from that explosion at the very last second by a covert faction. This implies that his entire death was a meticulously crafted illusion designed to protect his family while he was forced to serve an ulterior motive for the agency. If this theory holds true, the emotional ramifications would be absolutely staggering. Think about Maxie. She has spent years rebuilding her life, attempting to move forward, and raising her children in the shadow of his memory. To suddenly look across a crowded room and see the face of the man she buried would be a moment of unparalleled television drama. But it would not just be a joyous reunion, it would be a reunion built on a foundation of shattered trust. How could she ever fully forgive him for letting her believe he was dead, even if he claims it was to protect her? The psychological trauma of that revelation would take years to unpack, leaving the relationship in a fragile, unpredictable state. What about Mac and Liesel? Mac has always viewed Nathan as a son, a shining beacon of justice and morality. Liesel, despite her villainous tendencies, loved her son with a fierce, terrifying devotion. If they were to discover that the agency and organization they have both tangled with stole Nathan away and forced him into the shadows, their grief would instantly transform into a blinding, righteous fury. We would see a side of Mac and Liesel that we have never seen before, a united front of vengeance aimed directly at the heart of the organization that robbed them of their family. The protective instincts of these two powerhouses would ignite a war unlike anything we have witnessed recently. This leads us to a fascinating fork in the road regarding how the writers might execute this masterful return. Scenario A. It looks like the real Nathan could return fully aware of who he is and what he has lost. In this scenario, Nathan has spent the last several years deep undercover for Z, infiltrating dangerous syndicates, perhaps even tracking the very cold fusion technology or the criminal empire that is currently plaguing the town. He returns not as a victim, but as a hardened, seasoned operative who finally has the leverage to break free from control. He would walk back into the police department, demanding his life back, but finding that the town and the people he loves have fundamentally changed in his absence, forcing him to navigate a world that moved on without him. On the other hand, Scenario B presents a much darker, more tragic possibility. Scenario B. Could it be that the agency did not just save Nathan, but completely erased him? In this version of events, Nathan returns with absolutely no memory of Maxie, Liesel, or his past life. He is brought into town by Z as a weapon, a highly trained enforcer tasked with cleaning up the mess left behind by Ross and Cassius. This would create a devastating dynamic where Maxie and his family have to desperately try to break through his psychological conditioning, fighting to resurrect the soul of the man they love from the shell of a ruthless agent. This implies a long, agonizing journey of memory recovery that would keep viewers on the edge of their seats for months, wondering if the old Nathan is truly gone forever. Regardless of which path they choose, inserting the former actor into the role of Nathan would be a stroke of absolute genius. It allows the audience to accept the new face of Ethan without constantly comparing him to his predecessor, because the predecessor is busy delivering the performance of a lifetime in a completely different, highly anticipated storyline. The ripple effect of Nathan returning would touch every single character on the canvas. Anna, who is currently spiraling into paranoia and battling hallucinations, would find her reality completely shattered by the return of a man she believed was dead. Jason, who just returned from his own captivity, might be the only person who can truly understand the trauma Nathan endured in the dark. Ultimately, guys, we are watching a massive game of misdirection unfold right before our eyes. The network wants us to focus all our attention on the new face of Ethan, debating whether he can capture the charm and cunning of the character. But while we are looking left, the writers are quietly setting up a monumental twist on the right. Will they actually pull the trigger and bring the real Nathan back from the grave, utilizing a beloved actor in a role that would guarantee explosive ratings? Or is this all just a fleeting illusion, a desperate hope clinging to the shadows? If you ask me, the pieces are perfectly aligned for the ultimate resurrection, but in this town, you can never truly trust what you see until the final card is played.